But one thing I do want to ask you about though with AI is that when I first started to actually really like throw myself into this whole AI world just to learn more, the first thing that came to mind, I was trying to be able to identify what pain points do I have within my world that I just don't want to do anymore? Could AI help me with that? And the things that popped up to me were resume, CV, and cover letter, where I'm like, this is pain. I hate updating this. I have to just because I should. But I found when I first tried using ChatGPT for, asking it to be able to do a few of these things, it was okay. It wasn't like that great. But the more I kept on feeding it better prompts, the more I fed it more about me and updating it, eventually it got pretty darn good. It was, like I still obviously not perfect. You always need to go back and tweak and, change some things. But overall, not bad at all. Have you found that to be the case of telling folks about how this could potentially be a tool to help them? Do you advise, don't trust this thing because it's not there yet? Like, how do you approach AI within your world?
Yeah, so it's interesting when it comes to resumes because I teach a very, very, very specific format. It's actually how like Harvard Business School recommends their resumes to be structured. Yet, of course, I put like a Sarah spin on it because
yeah, of course, yeah.
we're learning professionals, right?
Gotta do your own thing.
We gotta make it a little fun.
Yeah.
But really, my big philosophy on resumes and what I've seen work. I actually just posted about this on LinkedIn today, which is funny. But where I have seen the most success with clients is, and I'm going to go back to talking about your niche, and everyone's going to be like, of course she is, but is rather than creating a resume and updating a resume for every job, creating one resume that is niche aligned. So align with the skills that you want to utilize in your next role. I always say a resume should be, your resume is a marketing document that explores and it tells the reader what you want to do next through the lens of what you've done in the past. And ChatGPT can't do that. And so while they could put together a pretty decent resume, a decent cover letter, what happens is, and this is what I was posting about today, is people are feeding it the job description for the job they want to apply for. They're feeding it their past resume. They're feeding it some information about themselves. But what's happening then is ChatGPT, or even people just do this non-ChatGPT, they basically create a carbon-esque copy of the job description. And so now what recruiters and hiring managers are getting is basically the job description just regurgitated back to them. So nothing actually, even if it looks different, it's not actually different content because everyone's been trained, tailor the resume to the job description, tailor the resume to the job description. It's like, great, I'm a hiring manager and I have 20 resumes in front of me that are basically the exact words I just put on a job description. Wow, I have this 21st resume here that is giving me all of the skills that I actually want someone to utilize in their next role. And I'm hearing about it from a experiential perspective. And it's allowing me now to say, oh, let me tie each one of these to what it is I'm actually hiring for. And on top of that, what I find that ChatGPT can't do that a human can do is, and I'm all for AI, by the way. So I know I'm kind of sounding like I'm not, but I'm all for it. I'll talk about how I do encourage using it, but is what I call your secret sauce. So for example, years ago, I was hiring for an instructional designer role and I had a bunch of, standard instructional design resumes in front of me. But the one that stood out the most to me was one where not only did she have some instructional design, not as much as the other people did, but she had a lot of creative writing skills and she highlighted those on her resume. Again, did my job description have anything about creative writing or content writing or technical writing? Not at all. But when I saw and it wasn't, half a resume about it, but when I saw those couple bullet points that talked about the creative writing piece that she had, I was like, oh, I didn't even know I needed that skill, but I want that skill. I want that on my team. I didn't know I needed it until I saw it in front of me. And so what happens is that's why I encourage people to get really clear on their niche, the skills they want to utilize. And that's what we market, because you never know when that hiring manager, that recruiter is going to say, yeah, great, they have all the things I knew I wanted, but here's things I didn't even know I needed, and this person has it. So again, if you're feeding ChatGPT a lot of that stuff around the job description, your past work experience, like it misses the secret sauce that I think really makes you stand out in a sea of applicants. Where I think it's beneficial, I also don't recommend it for cover letters. I spent maybe 2 full weeks. I just released a new module inside of my L&D resume reprogram course called Cover Letter Magic, and I spent like 2 full weeks in ChatGPT feeding it all this information to see if it could create a cover letter that mirrored the model that I like to teach, which is like using a three story arc for your cover letter, being the trailer to your resume, and it couldn't get there. And how I recommend it though is it can be really helpful to help you finesse some things. So if you can ask ChatGPT, like, how do I best describe how I did this, and this? How can I synthesize that or best describe that? So I think ChatGPT is really helpful for generating ideas. Or if you're feeling like, I don't know how to say this, like I'm just going to type into ChatGPT and see what they say, and it can help you to like I said, generate ideas. I find it really helpful to do that. Like if you're having a writer's block moment, a brain blank moment, it's really helpful for that. But to actually replace doing your resume and doing your cover letter, I think it just puts you in the same category as you kind of were in before, of it being just so standard to what it is like that society kind of expects to see, that it takes away some of that secret sauce and some of that personality that really only you can put in there because it's you.
Yeah, that makes sense. When you did that, by the way, when you fed it like all this data, did you feed it like your actual words about you either writing something for blog posts or journals or something? Like, did you actually like feed it like all of that type of personal information?
I fed it, so I didn't do it for me. I used like a couple of different client samples, like in different levels.
Sure.
But yeah, I fed them LinkedIn posts that they had written, their resume, their current resume, work experience, what are the things they want to do in their next role. I fed it a lot of information, and still I found it just felt like it read like a computer wrote it.
Yeah.
And I think eventually probably it could, we're moving into a phase where
it's gonna get there.
Very quickly it will get there.
Yeah.
And so at that point I'll reevaluate. But I think even at that point too, it's like, just make sure your personality's in there, and make sure it's niche aligned, right? Like my whole thing is you should never have to redo your cover letter or your resume for the jobs that you're applying for. Like maybe you're tweaking one little thing here and there, but if the role you're applying to really is aligned with your niche, and your niche is aligned with your resume is aligned with your niche, then there's nothing to update. And that saves like so many hours. It makes the process so much easier. So yeah, I think we'll get there. Right now, I'd like to use it more for like writer's block. How do I word things? And I talk about that in my L&D resume reprogram course. I talk about how we can use it for that, but not use it as a replacement.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing and the reason why I asked that, by the way, is to put a little point on that one, is that I fed it almost like all the stuff I've ever had. Anything I've written out was just like, here you go. And then I basically asked it to write for me a type of like a bio, because that was another thing. I was just like, I always hate writing bios. And I was like, tell me about me. I don't want to talk about my accomplishments. Like, whatever. And it ended it by saying like, Luke's a proud learning nerd. And I was like, well, okay. Like it identified. And I was just like, man, that's like my trademark thing I say. I was like, okay, we're getting there. Like it's not there yet.
But it's really smart. I think it's
crazy.
Really good. And I think for things like that, like for a bio, I think for telling it, maybe it can help with like some of your LinkedIn stuff. So you're about me, you can like feed it, and it can help. I think it's really helpful to synthesize. Like that's really where I think, like, rather than it giving you the answers, like it's really helpful to synthesize those things that maybe you're like, oh, I wouldn't have put it that way, or that is a good way of putting it. Like I'm going to use this word instead of that word. So I think it's really helpful for idea generation, for synthesizing a lot. And I know it'll get better, right? And I'm sure my opinion will change on it, and will expand, I'll say, actually, on it. But that's where we're at right now. End of March 2023.
That makes sense. I say timestamp this podcast episode.
Like, Sarah doesn't believe in AI. I'm like, no, I swear.
Yeah, things will change every single day. So whatever. I'm sure this isn't going to be even remotely close to helpful 6 months from now about how to use ChatGPT.
Sorry, everyone who's listening to this.
Right, we'll be using a whole new thing, and it's fine. This is fine.